Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream. Here once again on Friday with WayOfService. So glad to have you with me. Today we're doing our second part of watching the Lao Tzu video of quotes. We had a great time last week. It was amazing. Great discussion. I love this video. It's super fun to watch. So we're going to jump in just a couple minutes. I just want to let you guys know I'm excited about this new time, the 3 p.m. time. It works better for me. I think it works better for you guys. And instead of saying, oh, it's going to be 60 or 90 minutes, I'm going to allow myself to have the 90 minutes available, but I'm going to end the stream when I feel like makes sense. So instead of giving myself a solid time to end it, I'm just going to go with the flow, that is the Taoist way, isn't it? Hey, we got Ian and Matthew here. Welcome. Great to have you. Great to have you back, Matthew. And Ian's ditching work for this. Amazing. You couldn't have made a better choice, my friend. Could not have made a better choice. All right. It says I'm live. Everything's good. Let's get right into it, eh? Did my lineup work? What is going on? Oh, here we go. Viewing. There we go. That's the format I figured out. All right, guys. Let's watch. Okay, so last week we left off on this quote. If the people must ever be fearful of death, then there will always be an executioner. We had a great discussion about that. AI had a great answer. Go back and watch the replay to hear about that. Eleanor pointed out she had freed herself of her inner executioner, and so she did not have to live in fear anymore. So that's pretty good. All right, guys, let's watch. We're gonna watch 3 minutes at a time, just in case you weren't with us last week. We'll watch 3 minutes of the video so you can just enjoy the quotes, enjoy the video, and then I'm gonna pause it and go back to the beginning of the 3 minutes, and we're gonna talk about each quote. And then we'll do that for the next 3 minute segment. And I think we have 2 more segments, so we're going to start with this one. All right. Let's make sure everything's working. Let's turn it on and get going.
When pure sincerity forms within, it is outwardly realized in other people's hearts. The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. When men lost their understanding of the Tao, intelligence came along, bringing hypocrisy with it. Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. I have just 3 things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. Kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love. Your own positive future begins in this moment. All you have is right now. Every goal is possible from here. If lightning is the anger of the gods, then the gods are concerned mostly about trees. Health is the greatest possession. Contentment is the greatest treasure. Confidence is the greatest friend. A violent wind does not last for a whole morning. A sudden rain does not last for the whole day. There is no disaster greater than not being content. There is no misfortune greater than being covetous. The wise man is square but not sharp, honest but not maligning, straight but not severe, bright but not dazzling. Stop leaving and you will arrive. Stop searching and you will see. Stop running away and you will be found. Fill your bowl to the brim and it will spill. Keep sharpening your knife and it will blunt. If I had just a little bit of wisdom, I should walk the great path and fear only straying from it. To realize that you do not understand is a virtue. Not to realize that you do not understand is a defect.
All right. All right, guys. Did you enjoy that? I love this video. It's better from the beginning, but hey, we got to start it over, or we had to start from the middle, so, you can watch it anytime. I'll put the link in the description in case you want to watch it. Again, tell me what you think of these quotes. I'm here for you guys live, so which quote means the most to you? And tell me your thoughts on all the quotes. That's what I'm here to do, and it's really helpful to hear what your thoughts are on it so that I can know what to talk about and what to relate to. Ian says, love your show. Hey, click the like button then. Matthew says, fantastic to be back. Great to have you back, my friend. He says, with you drumming, I just saw Noah doing that. Thank you. That's hilarious. I don't know if you saw me. I laughed about that when I first read it. Susan says, hello. Welcome, Susan. All right, let's go back to the first quote in this set and discuss it. Back at 8:45. Yeah. Okay. When pure sincerity forms within, it is outwardly realized in other people's hearts. So this is related to one of the lessons that I mentioned in my 44 Insights. When we heal ourselves, we heal others. And, sometimes people might question or wonder if it's a good idea to follow these spiritual paths because you could be thought of as naive or as like a Pollyanna, as in you just be sincere, just be good, and God will take care of you. And people are like, can I really trust God? They worry about it. And so it's when they are actually sincere, that is reflected back. That's what this quote is telling us. When we have pure sincerity within, other people reflect it back to us. And it is through taking that step of trust to initially be open to people, to be sincere with them, no matter who they are, really. Just giving them a chance. Then their sincerity will come to you. You're giving them the chance and the opportunity. This is another lesson we talked about earlier. What is a bad man but a good man's job? And what is a good man but a bad man's teacher? As in, if someone else is not being sincere and you are sincere, then you are showing them that it's possible to be sincere. You're giving them the chance. You're being the good man. You're teaching them. And so this is the idea that we always should follow our moral code, our ethical codes in all the situations that we're involved in, because that is the only way to be. We should be that way with people who deserve it, and we should be that way with people who don't deserve it, to give them a chance and to hopefully teach them and have that benevolent energy, right? Matthew says, Heidi and I have been on a drive to 5 balance in all we do. I'm just amazed how this lines up with our effort to stay balanced. It's synchronicity, my friend. I was about to say it's 333, but it's not 333 yet. All right, let's go to the next quote.
Is outwardly realized in other people's hearts. The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness.
The key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness. And that is everything we've been talking about with the chakras, with the emotional scale, with the levels of thinking that we did a couple of weeks ago with Homath's video, if you haven't watched that. And the idea is that no problem can ever be solved on the level that it was created. That's a quote attributed to Albert Einstein. It's like if you can imagine two tribes warring with each other. The only way that they will ever stop warring is if they take a step back and above and see that it's actually better for both of them to not be at war. But they have to really see a bigger picture. They can't stay in their one-dimensional thinking about, I'm right and they're wrong. They have to rise above and say, okay, maybe we're both right or we're both wrong, And the best outcome is actually something that we can come to from a higher level. And what is amazing about God's creation and the universe and the multidimensional universe, the multiverse, is that there are infinite dimensions in my estimation. And a lot of people say we're on the third or fourth dimension and we're ascending to the fifth dimension. But basically, always know that there's a higher perspective that you can attain. And this is kind of the practice of any spiritual study and any meditative study, is to continue to, basically get closer to God's perspective, which is to understand and to know and see everything. And until we're at that point, we will not understand everything. So the key to growth is the introduction of higher dimensions of consciousness into our awareness.
Into our awareness. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want.
Look at that happy guy sipping tea. I love that picture. I love all the art. I love everything about this video. I love. So, okay, it's 5 stars from me. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. So this is to say, God speaks from within, and our higher self, our soul, our spirit speaks from within. And if we're really honest with ourselves, we follow our gut, we follow our heart. We know who we are, we know what we want. We might be clouded up in our heads and confused by a lot of different ideas, and that's something that Lao Tzu says, one of the great quotes, it was on the last episode, stop thinking and end your problems. So getting rid of ideas and concepts and being in your heart, being within yourself, listening to that still, quiet voice within you. And if you're honest, you know that it's true, right? That's what really strikes me with this quote. You know who you are and you know what you want. We live our lives at the obligation of other people and of all the agreements that we've come up with or that we've accepted. And instead, we should be listening to that inner voice that knows that our grand plan for our life, that has the highest perspective. That's our access to that higher perspective. And that is at the center of our being, right? Hey, Praise Christ Yoga's here. Heidi's here. Hi, Heidi. She says, yes, welcome. All right, what's the next one?
When men lost their understanding of the Tao, intelligence came along, bringing hypocrisy with it.
When men lost their understanding of the Tao, intelligence came along, bringing hypocrisy with it. So this is, again, a cautionary statement about the danger of ideas and of the intellect. We talked about this, I think, a couple weeks ago when we mentioned how the electromagnetic field of the heart is actually 6,000 times greater or more powerful than the electromagnetic field of the brain, even though we think about all the electrical activity in the brain. The reason for this is because the brain's neurons are not aligned. It's just a big mess in there, to be honest. And that's why we can think and understand so many different things, because there's so many infinite pathways in our brain. But those thoughts really gain power once they come down into our heart. And that's something I'm talking about in my next video that I'm going to release soon. Once we make those thoughts an intention and we align them with our heart, now we're broadcasting that 6,000 times stronger field out there. But basically the idea is that in the mind, there's a lot of confusion. And in the heart, there is not confusion. There is alignment. That's why the heart is so much more powerful. It's because all of the electricity in the heart is aligned. So that is to say, this is, again, cautioning. So when men lost their understanding of the Tao, let's get back to the quote. I feel like I'm going on a tangent. I hope you guys like my tangents. When men lost their understanding of the Tao. So that is to say, when men stopped being in their natural intelligence, and their instincts, following their heart in an automatic way, being in the flow with nature. That's what is the understanding of the Tao, is being in the flow with the nature and with the present moment. That's when it became intelligence. Intelligence came along, and now man was thinking about what he was going to do before he did it. And there's a separation between him and the present moment and the Tao. And then as a result of intelligence, now all of a sudden you have hypocrisy, which is the ultimate expression of intelligence where, or I guess the negative expression of intelligence, where you're so intelligent that you're able to explain something and still behave in the other way and confuse people, right? And that's the world we live in where people say one thing and do another. That's hypocrisy. So that's my understanding of this quote.
Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage.
Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. Yeah, it's an interesting. It's like I wonder if you need both. Like, what if you only have, if you love someone but you don't know if they love you? Do you have courage but not strength? Maybe. It feels like maybe that would give you. I'm thinking of like being in love with someone. It'd give you courage to act, but then if they don't return your love, your strength is lost. And when people love each other, I think of like more than just romantic love, like friendship love and just like soul to soul love and neighborly love. That creates a network that really forms the basis of the solid foundation of someone to feel strong and secure. And unfortunately, I think we live in a time when most people don't feel like they have that network of love that's holding them up and sustaining them. And so a lot of people don't feel strong, and they're at the mercy of, various addictions. I've talked about this in a lot of videos. The mainstream wants you to be confused and sad because that's what makes you a good consumer and it makes you a good employee, right? You're willing to take orders and you're going to spend your money on whatever they want you to spend your money on. And so there's been a lot of effort in the last, few decades to undermine and not replace the structures of society and of the family and all these things that give us that strength from being deeply loved. I'm struck by the word courage here because we've talked about the Hawkins emotional scale. I wonder if it's worth pulling it up. You can try it. Let's see. So I'm trying to find the one that has courage. Let's do this. So you can see courage right here in the middle. If you haven't watched some of our previous videos, courage is the breaking point between the lower, as he puts it here, the contracted state of being, and above courage, we get into the expanded state of being. And this is related to that quote, and I think we talked about it last week. Lao Tzu says, love is a decision, not an emotion. And so when he says that loving someone gives you courage, he's saying we always have access to courage through love. And by choosing to love, we then gain courage. And that's going to look different for each person. But, even if we don't feel loved by others, at least we have access to courage, which will let us reach up into these higher realms and eventually become one with God at the top. So we are never alone. We always have access to that. What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. We'll go to the next one.
I have just 3 things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures.
So good. That's such a good one. Again, like I said last week, nobody beats Lao Tzu in packing just ultimate truths into one sentence. I'm going to listen to this one again. It's so good.
Are your greatest treasures: patience. I have just 3 things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These three are your greatest treasures.
There's so many great things about this quote. The idea that he has just three things to teach, and they are simplicity, patience, and compassion. And they go together so perfectly. But it is to say, and this is something Lao Tzu says so often, it's like, this is all I want to tell you. I feel like there's so many spiritual teachers out there who make us feel like there's so much to learn and they're so far above us. They're so far ahead of us. Enlightenment is so far out of reach. But Lao Tzu is saying here, I have just three things to teach you. Simplicity, patience, compassion. And the understanding that those are your greatest treasures. Whatever treasure you might value in your life, these three things are actually the most precious treasures. And they are inside you already. And you don't have to protect them. There's no one is going to take them from you. The only thing that can happen is you can get rid of them yourself by not honoring them, right? By not acting. And what is simplicity, patience, and compassion? So simplicity is, I've been reading a lot of Paramahansa Yogananda. He says we should be focused on our needs and we should reduce our wants. Focusing on your needs will keep you fully occupied. And I think a lot of people forget about their needs and go for their wants, and then their needs are left unattended to, and their life, they lose that access to simplicity. And simplicity is, allows you to wake up with a state of peace and to correctly govern your life, to plan your life, and not to just be at the whims of the next complex need, or I guess want, at the whim of the next want that you have and the next agreement that you've made, and the complicated social network that you're a part of. Not that you shouldn't be a part of a social network, but you should not allow yourself to be entangled in agreements and alliances and rivalries and vendettas. So that is simplicity. Patience. The ultimate patience is to recognize that it's that Krishna quote that we gave. You have the right to do your prescribed duties, but you do not have the right to their results. You cannot demand that God or the universe gives you what you expect it to give you based on what you do. All you can do is do what you think is right, and then have patience that doing the right thing will have the positive effects that you want, or that you're expecting them, but you shouldn't be expecting the positive results. You must have patience. And then finally, compassion. That is the way of service. That's what this whole channel is about. If we are truly enlightened and we are truly at peace and one with the Tao and with God, we are automatically compassionate. Again, this is from Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi. His guru is speaking to him, Sri Yukteswar, and he's asking him, why don't you do any organization work? And he's like, oh, it's a lot of work. It's really hard. The leaders of organizations just get a lot of blame. They don't get credit. No matter what they do, people are unhappy. And his guru says to him, are you going to keep the divine nectar all to yourself? It's like, once you understand and you're at peace and you understand these great truths, are you really going to not share them with the world? And what better way to share them than to be as compassionate as possible, to be as selfless as possible, to be a living example, not just to teach these things, but to teach through action.
Things to teach.
One more time.
I have just three things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These three are your greatest treasures. Kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love.
This one is so cool because it just shows us all the different facets of kindness and how it has different effects in the world. Kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love. So let's start with kindness in words. I'm struck by the first and the last one. The difference is, there's words and then there's action, which is giving. So the words before the action, that creates confidence, right? That is what creates trust and shows someone that you are kind, right? And that gives them confidence in themselves and in you and in your relationship. So being kind in words, and I guess in the way that we talk to people and interact with people, that creates confidence, and that's the beginning of friendship or acquaintance or business relationship or whatever it is. From a spiritual perspective, that's the way to do it. It's so much simpler to live our lives like that, being kind in our words and always creating that peace that we want to have inside ourselves and we want to see outside of ourselves. And then kindness in giving, right? That creates love. So, in words, we give confidence, and it's easy to say the right thing. At least it's easier to say the right thing than to do the right thing. But then when we actually do the right thing, when people see through our actions that we are truly kind, in giving, that creates love. And that creates the true network that we were talking about earlier of that gives you strength and ties people together. And again, I feel like it creates confidence in a positive upward spiral. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. This line is very profound because it reminds us that by applying the spiritual truth of compassion and kindness in the way that we think about things, we will have these epiphanies. And this has definitely happened to me since creating the Way of Service. Thinking in this way, thinking in a kind way, makes us realize things, makes us see from a higher dimensional perspective, as we said earlier, and it creates profoundness. There's no other word for it. Profoundness is a word that's kind of hard to explain, but it's like bringing us to a higher level, right? Like a higher dimension. That's what the word profound. It's like it's like seeing a great view from the top of a mountain. It's a very profound experience, right? But if we do this in our thinking, we can bring our thinking to the higher dimensions and the higher perspectives. It's just the kids joining the live stream a little bit there. All right, I see we have 5 viewers, but there's no chats. Guys, you got to say something. Tell me what you think. I want to slow down and tell you, discuss your thoughts too. So you got to say something in the chat, though. Otherwise, I don't know what you're thinking. All right, next quote.
Your own positive future begins in this moment. All you have is right now. Every goal is possible from here.
Your own positive future begins this moment. All you have is right now. Every goal is possible from here. This quote I put in my 44 Insights video. It's my best video. If you haven't watched it, you got to watch it. It's awesome. In my humble opinion. I put this quote in it because it's such an inspirational quote. When you finally understand this truth, you can finally forgive yourself. You can accept everything that has happened to you up to this point, and you can be open to what's going to happen next. You can be open to the present. All you have is right now. Every goal is possible from here, no matter where you are. One of the quotes or ideas that I've heard and I feel is true, when you take on a great, difficult task, like starting a new business based on service and, a new YouTube channel, it's like, if other people can do it, why can't I? Right? There's hundreds of people who have succeeded doing this. I feel that I'm talented and I understand this stuff. So why shouldn't I succeed? Every goal is possible from here. This also speaks, I believe, to immortality. The fact that we are immortal souls, and I believe we have multiple lives. Even if you're a very old person, even if you're in very bad health, while you are still alive, you have the opportunity to pursue goals. And maybe not every goal, like you're not going to become the number one tennis player in the world when you're 85 or something, but maybe you could. I don't know. I don't want to say it's not possible. So it's more likely that your goal is possible than it isn't possible. And there are so many descriptions of miracles and just incredible stories that you can find, especially now with the information age, the internet. You can find these stories of people who have succeeded from whatever circumstance to whatever final goal you might have. Your own positive future begins in this moment. You can always make the decision now to change your perspective. This is my next video that I'm going to be releasing, the 5 spiritual tools. The 4th spiritual tool is reframing. If you can reframe your situation and understand the truth that you are one with God, that you are immortal, if you can reframe whatever difficulty is facing you with those truths, it will change everything. And not just to reframe it in your head, but to really believe it in your heart. Matthew, I knew I could count on you, Matthew, to help me out here. Matthew says, once you become aware, you see. Once you see, you become affected. Once you become affected, everything becomes profound. Is that your quote, Matthew? Once you become aware, you see. Once you see, you become affected. Once you become affected, everything becomes profound. Interesting. Yeah, it's like awareness and seeing something goes together. And then seeing something and being affected by it goes together. And then when you are affected, everything becomes profound. And that is, to me, is so true. In my experience of meditation and appreciating the present moment, when you really appreciate the present moment, no matter how mundane, it is profound. And that comes through being present. And that's the first spiritual tool that I'll tell you guys, is presence. Just being present is incredibly powerful.
If lightning is the anger of the gods, then the gods are concerned mostly about trees.
We finally got our comic relief. Lao Tzu made us wait 10 minutes to get the comic relief. If lightning is the anger of the gods, then the gods are mostly concerned about trees. I love this quote. And you got to remember, he's talking to the 500 BC crowd. So, and the polytheistic people, they're probably shocked and awed by lightning. But as he points out, lightning hits mostly trees. So if that's the nature of the gods, then they're really just worried about the trees. And is that really what you should be worried about? Is that what life is about? Being concerned about trees? Probably not, right? Probably not.
Health is the greatest possession. Contentment is the greatest treasure. Confidence is the greatest friend.
Health is the greatest possession. Contentment is the greatest treasure. Confidence is the greatest friend. A lot of people take their health for granted, but every day that you are healthy, and I'll say it now, it's like, thank God for being healthy today. Really respecting the fact that you have health, respecting your body, and maintaining that possession. If you want to possess anything, you should possess the thing that you cannot stop possessing, which is your body and your health. Contentment is the greatest treasure. Again, you just go back to those 3 treasures. That quote, it won't be too hard to find here, but yeah, the quote of the 3 treasures being simplicity, patience, and compassion. Contentment is a blend of patience and simplicity, is it not? And so this is, again, another angle on the treasures of simplicity, patience, and compassion. Simplicity and patience come through contentment. And contentment is how we remind ourselves to be patient and to keep things simple, right? Again, eliminating unnecessary wants and focusing on our needs. Susan says, being positive is good for healing, starting a business, working on a job, in relationships. It's better than being negative. You got that right. Yeah, I mean, basically all those things you mentioned are almost impossible to do if you're negative. You're not going to heal. Your new business is not going to do well. At your job, you're not going to do well, and your relationships aren't going to improve if you're being negative. So it's very true, but people forget about this. They forget about these truths, and then they act negatively, and that's just the way it is. But that's life. That's life, is trying to be positive and not negative. As I've said before, everything is about that, basically. So that's what we talk about on this channel. Ian says, I am so grateful to Jesus. He gave me my health back. I was in tooth pain for a month and couldn't stand it. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many health problems can and are healed, right? When we're in poor health, that's when we remember that health is the greatest possession. But healing is always possible. And I believe that to my core, unless you're up against fate. Maybe it is your fate to die this day. But I think you'll know that deep down. And if it's not your time to die, you should always remember that you can heal. If you seek out, if you're able to figure out what it is, what emotions you're blocking, what negative situation you're stuck in, and also, avoiding toxins, avoiding all the, pathogens and all the negative things in the world, there is a way to heal whatever your situation. Susan says, without your health, you have nothing. So they say, exactly. I mean, no matter how much money you have, you can't take it with you. No matter how beautiful a life you've built, if you are sick and can't enjoy it, it means nothing. It's like you don't have it. That's why health is the greatest possession. And the last line here, confidence is the greatest friend. So good. It's such a powerful way to put it. Confidence as a friend. When we doubt ourselves because we worry what other people might think, are those people really our friends if they make us feel unconfident, if they make us feel self-confident? Maybe not. But in whatever case, if you have confidence, that is like a great friend that you can rest your arm on and get strength from. And confidence comes from experience and also from knowledge and also from knowing the basic truths that, God always has our back. So that takes practice and it takes dedication to build confidence and to have confidence. But you should all be confident. All be confident. Especially if you're watching this, you're so smart. If you're watching this live stream, you're brilliant. You should be very confident.
Confidence is the greatest friend. A violent wind does not last for a whole morning. A sudden rain does not last for the whole day.
This quote reminds us that if a really negative situation has happened, it will not last, right? A violent wind does not last the whole morning. A sudden rain does not last for the whole day. When things happen suddenly or violently, they will be over quickly. And this is like a truth of nature, of life. So this is to remind us that in our darkest hour, there will be a light, at the end of the tunnel soon. And the worse the situation, almost the faster the recovery might be. I hope that doesn't come back to bite me. I think that's true, but I know a lot of people are in very difficult situations, and sometimes a dark situation descends slowly and powerfully and gradually, and that is not a sudden violent force. And those situations take more effort to escape. But this is just to remember that this is the way that nature moves, and so this is also how events in our lives unfold.
There is no disaster greater than not being content. There is no misfortune greater than being covetous.
There is no disaster greater than not being content. I love the phrasing here. He puts it in a negative way so that we can see how dangerous it is to not be content, how dangerous it is to not be, not keep our life simple, to not have patience. These are the things that lead us to disaster. There's a truism in the I Ching. It says, take care at the beginning or take care at the end as you would at the beginning. If you are not patient and keeping your mind simple, you could ruin your project. You could ruin the situation by moving to act too quickly. By acting on your lack of contentment, you could create a great disaster. We talked about this last week, the idea of non-action being most useful when we think that we need to respond in anger or tit for tat in a relationship. Instead, we should sit in contentment and in peace and not bring those disasters upon ourselves. There is no misfortune greater than being covetous. It's a very straightforward quote, and it's related to the first one. It is a misfortune, just like a disaster. And being covetous is to desire that of someone else, or to desire specific material possessions or experiences for yourself. Do you really need those things? Or do you just desire them because you're being covetous, because someone else got to experience it? And maybe it wasn't good for them. You just don't know because you don't have their perspective.
The wise man is square but not sharp, honest but not maligning, straight but not severe, bright but not dazzling.
It's another fantastic quote. So powerful. The wise man is square but not sharp. I think of, when someone is square, they're kind of predictable, right? But not sharp, as in he's not trying to cut into everyone with his wisdom. He's not trying to force others to see his way. But he is square, and he will show you the truth. He will be predictable. He will be consistent. But he does it in a way that is soft enough for people to hear him and to not feel that he is harsh. Honest but not maligning. This is the same idea. He's square and honest, but he's not honest to the point that he's going to hurt someone deeply, right? Certain honesty is not always appropriate, right? I think we think of honesty as like this great virtue, and it is. If you're going to say something, be truthful about it. But certain things are better left unsaid. Certain truths can be delivered in a way that is not maligning, in a positive way. And it is worth it to take the time, the extra time, to think about how to say something instead of saying it in a maligning, sharp way. Straight but not severe. Again, straight is square. You think of a square, it's straight, but not severe, right? Not sharp, not hurting someone. Bright but not dazzling. This is another powerful one. If we think about the saints throughout time, like if you read Autobiography of a Yogi, I believe Paramahansa Yogananda is and was a saint. And you think of him as dazzling, but he's not dazzling. If you read the story, he's just like you and me. And that's one of the things that made Jesus so powerful for people, is that he was a man. He was the Son of God, and he was a man. And he was humble. And so he was bright, very bright. He attracted many followers. But he wasn't dazzling. He wasn't about his own brightness. He wasn't about impressing everyone. He was just himself, and that was a brightness that was attractive, but he wasn't dazzling. Susan says, describe coveting. I think I did. Let me know if I didn't cover it. Matthew says, honesty with tact. Exactly. Diplomacy. I know you're good at that, Matthew.
Bright, but not dazzling.
Oh, I think it's worth bringing up the quote from the Tao Te Ching that I think this comes from, and it might not be exactly what it comes from, but it's so good that it's worth talking about anyways. All right. Here we go. I love this quote. The ancient masters were profound and subtle. Their wisdom was unfathomable. There is no way to describe it. All we can describe is their appearance. They were careful, as someone crossing an iced-over stream. Alert as a warrior in enemy territory. Courteous as a guest. Fluid as melting ice. Shapeable as a block of wood. Receptive as a valley. Clear as a glass of water. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? The master doesn't seek fulfillment. Not seeking, not expecting, she is present and can welcome all things.
Stop leaving and you will arrive. Stop searching and you will see. Stop running away and you will be found.
This is such a powerful one. Again, teaching us to not take action, to be at peace, to be where we are now, to be content. Stop leaving and you will arrive, right? I have so many people that I can imagine or that I can think of. They're always leaving. They're always leaving. They got to get to the next thing. I gotta get going. I gotta do this thing. You try to talk to them on the phone. I gotta get off the phone. Blah blah blah, whatever it is. And so they're always leaving, and so they never arrive. And what is an arrival but this joyous occasion where we finally reach what we're looking for? Stop searching and you will see. So powerful. A powerful statement on the power of meditation. The power of accepting what is and not trying to find the answer somewhere else. This is one of the core, I think these three quotes and even the middle quote, it applies to spiritual seekers, and it really explains Lao Tzu's philosophy of everything you need is already in front of you. Stop searching, stop looking, stop striving, and just be. And then you will see the truth will loom into view as you sit there, as you stop searching, as you are at peace. Stop running away and you will be found. God's trying to find you. Your guides and your spirit, your higher self, your destiny, all these things are trying to find you. But we're running away into all of these desires that we have, all these detours. And so we're always running, and we have to stop running, stop moving, and accept the present moment and see what God is giving to you right now.
Fill your bowl to the brim and it will spill. Keep sharpening your knife and it will blunt.
This is again about balance, and he uses these perfectly obvious examples. Fill your bowl to the brim and it will spill. The idea being, why don't we take and keep sharpening your knife and it will be blunt. Why don't we take what happens in nature, in our everyday life? We all probably fill a bowl every day, cereal or whatever, food. And you would think logic would say more is better. Put more in the bowl. You want more in your bowl than less. But the fact is, if you fill your bowl too high, it will spill. and now you have a bigger problem on your hands. If you look to sharpen your knife and you want it to be sharper and it's so sharp, you're like, hey, it could be sharper than this. At a certain point, the sharpening is actually reducing the sharpness of the knife. So we apply this to our life when we are living in an unbalanced way, when we are doing the same thing over and over against our natural instincts, against our desire for variety, against the energy that is moving through us, against the forces of yin and yang as the I Ching describes. Instead of being in meditation and letting God help us to see what is our next step, it is never obvious. Life is beautiful and exciting because there is so much variety and there is so much unknown. But the only way we can tap into that is to get out of our stuck patterns, our well-worn grooves that we think are helping us, but maybe we're stuck because we're just trying to sharpen the same knife just day after day after day. And we're like, why isn't this knife getting sharper? It's actually getting more blunt. It's because we need to stop, put it down, do something else.
It will blunt. If I had just a little bit of wisdom, I should walk the great path and fear only straying from it.
I love this quote because it just exemplifies that deep humility that is at the core of the great masters. As we said in the last one, the more you expand, the more you realize how little you know. And so he says, I'm not saying I even have more than a little bit of wisdom, but if I had just a little bit of wisdom, I would just do this one thing. I would follow this great path, simplicity, patience, kindness, and fear only straying from it. Because it is only when we stray from that path that we are subject to the darker forces in life. If we are honest with ourselves in the negative times in our lives, we are complicit in that negativity. But if we can truly walk the great path, we will always be protected. As Lao Tzu said earlier, he who defends with love will be protected by heaven with love.
Path and fear only straying from it. To realize that you do not understand is a virtue. Not to realize that you do not understand is a defect.
To realize that you do not understand is a virtue. Not to realize that you do not understand is a defect. This is two sentences, or I guess it's just one sentence. It says the same thing twice. But really, it is related to what I was saying before, that humility. It's the person who believes that they know the answer that cannot be taught, right? And that includes by God and by their experiences in life. They will ignore the lesson and the truth that's right in front of them because they do not realize that they do not understand. And so they're in this defective state. And to realize that you do not understand, as I said earlier, until you have perfect understanding with God in the highest possible infinite dimension, you still do not understand. And that is a great virtue. And it is that orientation that allows us to continue to expand and grow. To think that you do not, or that you do understand, to not realize that you do not understand, is to believe that you no longer have any growing to do, which is pretty much never the case. Matthew says, I was taught to hold the iron rod as a child. The iron rod leads you to the fruit and the tree of life. This is the same wisdom. I am not familiar with those ideas, Matthew. Would you please expand on that? What is the iron rod? What is the fruit and what is the tree of life? I have studied the Kabbalah a little bit, and it's related to the chakras, so maybe that's the tree of life, the chakras. But I feel like you're maybe talking about something else, so tell us. All right, guys. This is the last segment. It's almost 4 o'clock, so we'll just finish these last quotes and we'll be done. We're going to watch for 3 minutes with no commentary from me, and then we will come back and do commentary and have a discussion. The iron rod is the word of Christ. Okay. The tree of life is the tree of life. Yeah, as I said, I've been studying Yogananda, and his teacher, Sri Yukteswar, has a book about comparing Hinduism and Christianity and how he explains how they're teaching the same thing. And a lot of the, especially Old Testament quotes that he uses, he says that they're speaking in allegory to things like the chakras, reincarnation, and things like that. So I'm excited to read that book. I haven't read it, but and I've heard some of the ideas from the autobiography of the yogi. But I do believe that the tree of life is related to the chakras in my experience, and the spine, right? The spine and the brain. They teach that in meditation we would bring our focus into the spine and the energy centers in the spine. That is how we reach God. That's a little more complicated. All right, we're gonna watch 3 minutes with no interruption. Enjoy.
Is a defect. Ambition has one heel nailed in well, though she stretches her fingers to touch the heavens. When you are content to simply be yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you. The difficult problems in life always start off being simple. Great affairs always start off being small. The snow goose need not bathe to make itself white, neither need you do anything but be yourself. Love is of all the passions the strongest, for it attacks simultaneously the head, the heart, and the senses. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the student is truly ready, the teacher will disappear. Hope and fear are both phantoms that arise from thinking of the self. When we don't see the self as self, what do we have to fear? Water is the softest thing, yet it can penetrate mountains and earth. This shows clearly the principle of softness overcoming hardness. You are controlled by the one who makes you angry. The reason why the universe is eternal is that it does not live for itself. It gives life to others as it transforms. Ordinary men hate solitude, but the master makes use of it, embracing his aloneness, realizing he is one with the whole universe. Women want a lot of intimacy with the man they love.
All right, I just have to pause it for that one because this one gets roasted in the comments. Because this one, it's like, top comment is, here's what you came for. Thank you for this. You're a time saver. Thanks, man. What a letdown. That quote was super lame. Oh, man. Let's listen to it again.
Intimacy with the Women want a lot of intimacy with the man they love. Do you imagine the universe is agitated? Go into the desert at night and look at the stars. This practice should answer the question. The softest things in the world overcome the hardest things in the world. Through this, I know the advantage of taking no action. To bear and not to own, to act and not lay claim, to do the work and let it go. For just letting it go is what makes it stay. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power.
All right, that was the video. Took us 2 weeks to get through 15 minutes of video, but we did it. All right, we're going to go back and do an analysis. Let's see what Matthew says. As we partake of the fruit of the tree of life, we are compelled to share that fruit, or at least share the path to the tree. The fruit of the tree is the love of Christ. Interesting. I feel like you're gonna have to tell me more about this because I'm having a hard time following perfectly the logic. All right, this is the last quote we did, and the next one is this one. There we go.
Ambition has one heel nailed in well, though she stretches her fingers to touch the heavens.
This one is a fascinating one to me. I picture someone reaching, right? Someone with ambition. They're reaching, and their foot is stuck in the ground. And it's like when we're very ambitious, we're almost trying to do two things at once. We're trying to reach and we're trying to stay stable, and those two things don't work together. So I feel like this quote is kind of a caution against ambition. And it's explaining how it's kind of contradictory. You know, the heel is stuck to the earth, but they're reaching for the heavens. It's almost an impossible situation that can never be resolved. That's, again, what ambition kind of leads to is, you know, you always want more. You always want the bigger, better situation or thing or, you know, accolades, whatever it is.
When you are content to simply be yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you.
I love this one. This one, again, teaches us to not get involved in these complex social dynamics where we're trying to prove ourselves. And also, you know, as he said earlier, confidence is the greatest friend. If you just are confident and in your own knowledge of that you're doing the right thing, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're on your path, you're being yourself, right? And you're not doing it in order to beat someone else, or, you know, you're not constantly looking at your competition and trying to figure out what they're doing and what you can be doing better than them, always trying to one-up each other, right? The best and most long-staying companies are the ones that came up with their own thing. They ignored what was going on in the world as far as in their industry, and they forged a new path. And when you forge your own path, everyone will respect you, right? At least eventually. And also, everyone will respect you as in not that you're famous, but that when they experience you, when they come into contact with you, they will see that you're confident. They will understand that you're driving with that energy of life, of God, because you're on the path, and they have to respect that, right? And if they don't, it's because they're a fool, and you'll be able to tell that right away. Matthew says, as we partake of the fruit of the tree of life, okay, I read that already. The tree of life was a dream or vision by an ancient prophet. Here's a synopsis of the vision. It shows me that prophets or wise men of old seem to teach the same lessons. Yeah, I mean, all these different ways of looking at it and allegories all go together. They never contradict each other. That is the great unity in all spiritual teachings.
The difficult problems in life always start off being simple. Great affairs always start off being small.
This one teaches us two great truths to apply to our lives. One is to take care of problems before they get out of hand. There's a quote in the Tao Te Ching. Yeah, let's just find it because it's so good. What is recent is easy to correct. What is small is easy to scatter. So I think of, prevent trouble before it arises. Put things in order before they exist. The great pine tree grows from a tiny sprout. The journey of 1,000 miles starts from beneath your feet. So that is what it's telling us here. When you're dealing with a problem, better to react to it immediately. What is recent is easy to correct. I've quoted that a few times in my videos. That is a really important social thing to remember. If you have an apology to give it immediately. That's a really great social way to be liked, is if you're in conversation and you say something weird or funny or stupid, you just apologize or take it back right away. It's if you can immediately recognize your error, that's when people give you the most leeway. It's when you allow your error to persist for, days, weeks, months, years, whatever, lifetimes. That's when it becomes a big problem. Great affairs start off being small, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the step beneath your feet. Every single large project can be broken down into small steps, and that's what every single productivity expert tells us. Every single CEO and great producer in the world, they say, take your difficult problems and break them down into actionable tasks. That is great affairs start off as being small. Matthew says, Heidi says she doesn't know how to do comments from her phone. I can show her sometime. Maybe you can show her. Or she can just comment through you. That's fine.
The snow goose need not bathe to make itself white. Neither need you do anything but be yourself.
The snow goose need not bathe to make itself white. Neither do you need to do anything but be yourself. This is a reminder that we are our highest, truest nature by not taking action, by not striving, by not leaning out of our center. It's so hard to remember this. All we're really asked to do by God is to improve ourselves by a little bit each day and to be ourselves. We're not expected to make these dramatic changes all the time. Just like the snow goose is beautiful by itself. There's another quote from this video. Spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. No one needs to tell it what to do. The grass doesn't have to study how to grow. The snow goose doesn't have to study how to be white. And so neither do you need to do anything but be yourself.
Love is of all the passions the strongest, for it attacks simultaneously the head, the heart, and the senses.
An interesting caution about love. And it's true. We feel love in our heart. It can screw up our heads, and we even feel it through the senses. So this is a reminder to perhaps to guard your heart and to be sure that you're not just getting carried away in temporary love, infatuation that can kind of take over your life.
When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the student is truly ready, the teacher will disappear.
This one almost makes me sad, but it's really powerful because everyone's heard the first half, right? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And in today's age, it's like, if you're ready, you can find a teacher. There's infinite people online, WayOfService.com if you want to talk to me. But when you're ready, the right teacher will appear in your life. And if you trust God, that'll be the case. But what makes me sad is when the student is truly ready, the teacher will disappear. As in, at some point, the student will graduate and the teacher will not be necessary anymore. And there's so many, maybe because I'm reading an autobiography of a yogi, but eventually Paramahansa doesn't need his guru. He has become the master, and he is to teach. And I think of, our spiritual guides. Someday they will not be with us because they will be on to a different project because we will have graduated to another level. Maybe we'll have different guides, but there is this great dynamic in life that eventually the teachers will disappear. If you are truly ready, you won't need your teacher anymore.
Hope and fear are both phantoms that arise from thinking of the self. When we don't see the self as self, what do we have to fear?
Hope and fear are both phantoms that arise from thinking of the self. When we don't see the self as self, what do we have to fear? This is again, and this is taught in Christianity as well, but also in Taoism and Hinduism, Buddhism. I am that, right? God says whatever, or Jesus says, whatever you do for the least of your brothers, you do for me. God and the lowest of people are one. And this is true, this is spoken of in Taoism and Buddhism. So the truth is that the self doesn't truly exist, or we are not the self. We are not this body or this identity. We are something greater. And so we can let go of both hope and fear when we don't see the self as self. And I think through spiritual understandings and meditation, you will start to understand this is true. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already, folks.
Water is the softest thing, yet it can penetrate mountains and earth. This shows clearly the principle of softness overcoming hardness.
Again, the idea of non-action being more powerful than action in many cases. Water is the softest thing, right? You can't really break someone by throwing water at them. And yet, through persistence and dedication, water can penetrate mountains and earth. This is the principle of softness overcoming hardness, right? And we apply that to our lives by being soft, by being compassionate, by being patient, by being kind, and by being present, instead of being hard by imposing judgments or taking actions and making more judgments and applying judgments to ourselves. Can we be soft? There is a time to be hard, and I feel like the Tao Te Ching describes that the time to be hard is actually very rare. It's a very rare occasion when you should summon all of your energy in a particular direction and exemplify that hardness. Most of the time, we should be like water. We should be flowing. We should be content with the low places that people disdain. And it is in that way that we nourish all things. That's from the Tao Te Ching as well.
You are controlled by the one who makes you angry.
I feel like this one makes me a little more angry. You think about it, and it's true. That's why it's so difficult to accept. When you're angry, it's because you don't feel like you have power in a situation, but it's by paradox that focusing on that negative point that makes you angry actually makes you have less power. As one of the first quotes in this video, he says, the greatest fighters are never angry. It is because through calmness that we really have access to our power. But when we are angry, we are controlled by the one who makes us angry, or by the thing that makes us angry. The situation all of a sudden has great power over us.
The reason why the universe is eternal is that it does not live for itself. It gives life to others as it transforms.
All right, this one I got a special treat for you. Those of you guys who stick around. We have AI's description of this one, and I thought it was great, so we're going to read this one. All right. The reason why the universe is eternal is that it does not live for itself. It gives life to others as it transforms. This quote is truly one of Lao Tzu's most profound insights about the nature of existence. This beautiful observation contains several layers of wisdom that align powerfully with the WayOfService philosophy. The paradox of selflessness and eternity. At its core, Lao Tzu reveals a profound paradox. That which does not grasp at its own existence actually achieves immortality. The universe endures precisely because it doesn't strive to endure. It simply gives, transforms, and flows. This contradicts our human instinct to preserve and protect ourselves above all else. The universe as the ultimate model of service. Lao Tzu positions the entire cosmos as the ultimate exemplar of selfless service. The universe doesn't hoard energy, it circulates it. It doesn't protect itself, it continually gives itself away through endless transformation. Stars burn themselves out to create the elements that form planets and eventually life. Nothing in nature exists solely for itself. Dynamic of transformation. The quote highlights that giving and transformation are inseparably linked. By transforming, the universe gives. By giving, it transforms. This reflects the Taoist understanding that change isn't something to resist, but the very essence of existence. And through this constant change, continuity is paradoxically maintained. For individuals on the way of service path, this teaching suggests that immortality through impact, we achieve a form of eternity not by preserving ourselves, but through how we impact others. Service as natural law. Service isn't just a moral choice, but alignment with the fundamental pattern of the cosmos itself. Embracing change. Resistance to personal transformation blocks our capacity for service. When we allow ourselves to continuously transform, we participate in the universe's eternal dance. The illusion of separateness. Our perception of ourselves as separate entities seeking self-preservation contradicts the universe's interconnected nature. This quote supports your way of service philosophy by suggesting that service isn't just an ethical choice, it's an alignment with the deepest pattern of reality itself. The universe demonstrates that giving life to others through continuous transformation is the only path to endurance. When you teach people to live in service, you're actually inviting them to participate in the universe's fundamental nature. This isn't just spirituality, it's cosmology, reflected in everything from ecosystems to subatomic particles. This perspective transforms service from sacrifice to participation in something eternal. It suggests that the self-centered way of ego is fundamentally misaligned with the nature of reality, while the way of service flows with the universe's inherent pattern of eternal giving through transformation. Hey, welcome, Yale. We're just wrapping up here, I think. I think we got a few more. I hope you guys enjoyed that reading. I think that was a great reading by AI. And that AI is trained on my way of service stuff. I mean, it's read everything I've written, basically, or most of the things I've written. So that's why it understands it so well.
It transforms. Ordinary men hate solitude, but the master makes use of it, embracing his aloneness, realizing he is one with the whole universe.
I had a moment like this earlier myself, when I was suddenly alone. Like I got off the phone or something and I was like, what am I going to do? And, most people kind of run away from being alone. Maybe they get on the internet, they get on their social media, they get on Netflix, whatever it is, the thing that makes them feel like they're not alone. But to embrace that the master makes use of solitude, and I would say also silence. And he embraces his aloneness, realizing he is one with the whole universe, which is meditation and true present awareness. That is at the core of all spiritual practice.
Women want a lot of intimacy with the man
Bravo,
they love.
Lao Tzu!
Do you imagine the universe is agitated? Go into the desert at night and look at the stars. This practice should answer the question.
This is another fantastic quote. And it's so in your face. It's just like, do you really think the universe is agitated? The person who's like, well, this is a problem and that problem and my life is like this and I'm so agitated. And it's like the master's just like, do you imagine the universe is agitated? And maybe the student says, well, yeah, sometimes, I don't know, And he says, go into the desert at night and look at the stars. That should answer your question. It's just so, it's so basic, Yale says, too bad most people can't see the stars anymore. Yeah, I hope someday that'll change in our lifetime. I think it might. I think we're dealing with some dark times right now, but and it is possible to see the stars. You can see the stars where I live. Um, if you haven't seen the stars in a while, probably worth it to get out there and take a camping trip and look at the stars because it will answer this question.
The softest things in the world overcome the hardest things in the world. Through this, I know the advantage of taking no action.
This is kind of right like the quote we said earlier, so I'm not going to go over it too long. But the advantage of taking no action, right? Being soft and not being hard. Yale says it has a real effect on us. Definitely. Light pollution, that's the reason they call it pollution, and that stops you from seeing stars. Pollution in the sky makes the sky cloudier, which makes it harder to see the stars, and all these things have an effect. I think of a Taoist master that I read about. He was in the mountains of China at the monastery, and I remember he was getting ready to leave his body in a conscious way to decide to leave. And one of the things he cited, he was like, the airplanes disrupt the chi in the sky. He was bothered by airplanes flying over, even though he's in a remote part of China in the mountains, there's still airplanes flying over his head. So all these things have subtle impacts on us, and hopefully someday we can structure our society in a more Taoist and harmony with nature way.
To bear and not to own, to act and not lay claim, to do the work and let it go. For just letting it go is what makes it stay.
So this quote again is just like the one we talked about earlier with AI. It's in acting without expectation that we really can be immortal, and that we can truly be of service and be compassionate. Being truly of service is not thinking about laying claim. And to bear and not to own, it's like to have the things that are on your body or in your person and not to own them, to accept that they will flow in and out of your life, to be totally at one, and to do your work and let it go. This is so profound. Do your work and then let it go. Don't work so hard that you're constantly thinking about it and thinking about the next thing you need to work on. Do your work and let it go, and let the other things fall into place. Let other people help you. Let the system, let God help you to reach the goal, instead of working and holding on to it forever, because that will make it so that you can never get there. You don't have permanence in that way because you're always leaning and striving. For just letting it go is what makes it stay.
Letting it go is what makes it stay. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power.
Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. A direct quote from the Tao Te Ching. It's comparing intelligence and wisdom and strength and power. Between intelligence and wisdom, which would you rather have? Between strength and power, which would you rather have? Controlling and knowing others is what most people often seek to do. But if you really want wisdom, you must know yourself. If you really want to have power in your life, you must master yourself. Who do you interact with more, others or yourself? It is a pretty dramatic difference, the amount of time you spend with yourself versus with others. So know yourself and master yourself instead of working to know others and master others. That's going to do it for me today on the Way of Service podcast live stream every Friday at 3 o'clock Central Time. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'm excited to do it with you every week. I love hearing all of your comments and your chats. If you're watching the replay, please comment below. I will answer all the comments. I'm here every Friday, and I love you. I'm Danny for Way of Service. I'll see you next time.